there has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, in our society, in this country, we have the Second Amendment, which allows people to procure and own firearms. It's not meant, obviously, for mentally ill people to procure these firearms and to be able to own, carry them. And in this incident, the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee, we had another horrific incident, an active shooter incident that is just all too common in this country. It's, people, I think, from other nations, they look at our country and they think, well, why was this person allowed to own 7 guns like this? And of course, then they refer to the guns as assault weapons. I know she had 2 what they would describe as assault style weapons and 1 handgun. But really what we want to concentrate on is to not ever have this happen again. But it happens too frequently. And the people you're seeing on the screen are the victims of this shooter. The little boy there, he's 9 years old. His name is William Kinney. And next to him is Haley Scruggs, whose father is a preacher, and they had just moved to that area of Nashville. And then next to her is a young girl, 9 years old also, Evelyn Deekhouse. And to the bottom left is the head of the school. Her name is Catherine Kuntz. And next to her is school custodian, age 61, Mike Hill. And next to him is a substitute teacher, then Cynthia Peak. These are the victims of a mentally ill shooter who indiscriminately came into this school and started shooting people. And luckily, in this case, the police were so well trained and did their job so well that this incident, the total time elapse of this entire incident was 10:13 a.m. in the morning till 10:27. So it lasted for 14 minutes. And look, there's no bringing back those 6 people that were killed by the shooter. But that's an incredible police response. And we've seen police responses to active shooters in this country that left a lot to be desired. And specifically, we'll talk about Uvalde, Texas, where the officers waited, hearing gunfire, waited to go in there until they got instructions as young kids were being killed. The other case was in Parkland, Florida, where a school resource officer never entered the building, even when he was hearing gunfire. Officers are now trained not to wait for anything, to move towards the gunfire, to save people's lives. That's the name of the game, to move towards the gunfire. And that certainly wasn't done in numerous incidents in this country. But in this case, it was done with precision and with bravery. And these are the 2 officers that confronted the shooter. On the left-hand side is Officer Michael Collazo, a 9-year veteran of the Metropolitan Nashville, Tennessee Police. And next to him is Rex Engelbert. And they, without hesitation, used their training, entered the school, and moved toward the gunfire. And no doubt saved numerous lives as a result of their training and of their bravery. And I think that their names really need to be mentioned in this case, because many people across this country, across this world, take police for granted. And we certainly here on Police Off the Cuff do not take police for granted. In fact, we want to praise them. They did an unbelievable job. We're going to go into a little more of the history of active shooters and how police are trained today is a lot different than one of the most widely infamous active shooter cases, of course, was Columbine. And so much was done with two students named Harris and Klebold, who that was one of the most, it wasn't the first active shooter, but it was one of the most highly publicized ones. And since then, we've had hundreds more. And we always want to know, when will this stop? What can we do to prevent this? And we're going to discuss some of those things. And we, as former police officers, hate the fact that these cases are always politicized. Immediately, the bodies aren't even buried yet, and they're talking about, banning this, banning that, and it's just horrific. At least if they could wait for the people that were affected by this, the families, the loved ones, and of course, the people who lost their lives, give them a little bit more respect. With me tonight to discuss this case and to discuss active shooters and his take on it is Professor Mike Geary, who's also a retired NYPD sergeant and a lawyer. Mike, welcome to the show.
Billy, thank you for having me on. Good evening, everyone.
Mike, I just, I have a certain view of this. And look, I also am not, I want solutions also, and the solutions can't all come from one side. We could argue as, Second Amendment proponents that they need more security at the school. If they would have had an armed guard at the school, perhaps the person doing this may have known about that and picked somewhere else to go. But clearly, it's not a one-step solution. There's numerous things that have to be done in order for this to mitigate these active shooters.
Yeah, Billy, it's multiple layers of problems. You have, how do you keep kids safe in a school environment and do it perhaps with an armed security guard or an armed officer? We know that sometimes works to decrease any sort of violence in schools. The people put forward all kinds of proposals like arm every single teacher, things like that. So it goes from the common sense ones to the crazy ones. But the solutions are multiple, and there has to be some sort of federal response, because we in America are very, very mobile, and you want to stop these sort of shootings across the United States in all 50 states. So if one state enacts a law that's different from another, that may strengthen schools, another state may not have those sort of laws. And so this really requires probably a national response to deal with people with emotionally disturbed people, to deal with the availability of firearms, and to deal with federal law for procuring firearms. So multiple issues, multiple layers of government need to be involved in this solution.
Mike, is the solution legislation, or is it, a bipartisan agreement, one from A and one from B, and give and take a little bit? Is that more the solution than to just say, one side may say, oh, let's ban guns, let's ban assault weapons. The other side will say, no, Second Amendment allows us to carry guns, and it doesn't specifically ban certain types of guns. But certainly we've seen horrific active shooters. The one in Buffalo recently, that was videotaped by the perpetrator's body cam. Was almost like, it was so horrific, it looked like a video game. And then we have someone go into a school. This isn't the first time, goes into a school and kills 3 9-year-olds. Out of the 6 people that were killed, 3 of them were 9-year-old students.
This is going to require bipartisan solutions from both political parties on the federal level and also on the individual state level. When you start talking about, red flag laws, you're going to need bipartisan support for anything. Now, if you are totally opposed to the Second Amendment or you are totally in favor of arming everyone, you're at both extremes. You're not. It's not going to work. Every party, well, each party has to give and take a little bit to come up with some sort of solution that may or may not address the problems that we have. We're not going to know until at least we try. And it may be that there is no perfect solution. But anything that we could do as an American society, both in like states like New York or California or Minnesota or anything, we have to work towards it. But it also has to be on the federal level too. And part of the problem is that we're coming into an election cycle. Remember, 2024, and these sorts of very, very sad, serious mass shootings are often publicized by both sides, and that is very disrespectful to the families of the loved ones who are killed and to the loved ones' memories. But this is going to be has to be a bipartisan effort if anything positive is going to come from this tragedy.
100%. Mike, the officers had body cam video,
Hmm?
and I'm going to show that. It just shows their bravery,
Was
their
good.
level of training. And folks, if anyone is queasy and doesn't want to watch this, I would recommend that you tune out now if you don't want to watch this. But this is showing real police bravery from my point of view. And I just want to play a little bit of this.
Hey, hold the air.
Unbelievable.
That was excellent.
Like, look, it makes me proud to see those guys and the job they did, but also chilling. If you don't get a reaction from everyone watching this, and I'm not saying they watched it for the first time on our show, it's been playing on the news, and it is chilling to see that body cam video. And how many people that aren't police could feel themselves in those officers' shoes doing what those officers are doing, or would say, I could never do that?
Bill, it was fabulous, and I watched the video from the 2 officers' body cams, and it was just amazing. And looking at it, my adrenaline was pumping, and I remember being with my partner Augie, in the 4-6 for all those years, and going down hallways and stuff. And luckily, we never had a fatal encounter like that. But that's what cops do. You just put you put yourself on overdrive, and you're concentrating on the task at hand. You're not thinking about really getting killed. You're thinking about eliminating that threat, and that threat right there was one of the most worst kind of threats you could ever face, because you're in a school with children and there's a shooter up on that second floor. God bless those officers. The training, if you watch the entire video, you can see their training and their direction. They work with each other. They work in pairs. They work in groups of 3. They're each taking a side. Someone's taking left. Someone's taking right. Someone's going down the middle. They're overlapping each other, covering each other. It's fabulous work, and God bless them. And that shows you what good training can do.
Mike, not only did they do a great job in the police response, but they did a great job in getting the message out.
Mm-hmm.
The communication that the Metropolitan Nashville Police did was second to none. I thought it was fantastic. And I'm going to play a little bit of that so folks can see what we mean by the messaging put out by the department.
Update this afternoon as to what we know about the Covenant murders on yesterday. There's one rumor going on throughout the community that we want to take a moment to clear up. There are those who think that specific individuals were targeted by the shooter who entered the building on Monday. We have no evidence that individuals were specifically targeted. This school, this church building, was a target of the shooter, but we have no information at present to indicate that the shooter was specifically targeting any one of the 6 individuals who were murdered. Chief John Drake will now update you on the progress of the investigation overnight and this morning, including what we know about the individual's purchases of firearms over the past couple of years. Again, this will be a brief briefing today. Chief John Drake.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for being here. Just a brief update of what we know right now. We've interviewed the parents of Audrey Hale, and we've determined that Audrey bought 7 firearms from 5 different local gun stores here legally. They were legally purchased. 3 of those weapons were used yesterday during this horrific tragedy that happened. We know that they felt that she had 1 weapon and that she sold it. She was under care, doctor's care, for an emotional disorder. Law enforcement knew nothing about the treatment she was receiving, but her parents felt that she should not own weapons. They were under the impression that when she sold the 1 weapon that she did not own anymore. As it turned out, she had been hiding several weapons within the house. We also don't have a motive at this time. We feel that these students that were targeted were randomly targeted. There was not any particular student that she was looking for at the time of the incident. And that's what we know as I speak, and we'll take any questions that you have.
So, Mike, pretty good messaging, right? They're not trying to hide anything. And when they don't know the answer, they said it's still under investigation, but dispelled some rumors, which, that's one of the things I disdain about the media is when they don't know something, they'll simply make it up,
Right. Yeah. It's good to dispel the rumors quickly. They're tight-lipped only about a few things, but they tamp down on the rumors right away. And that's a good thing because rumors, as we know from being in NYPD and we see with the other types of mass shootings, rumors get in the way. They take on a life of their own. People start to speak about the rumors as if they're fact, and they repeat them until it becomes, part of the story. Meanwhile, it's not. And so they did an excellent job, and hopefully they'll keep doing that. Just brief daily updates when they get a little bit more information. And I think the public would be satisfied with that.
Mike, an NYPD lieutenant, a retired lieutenant that I worked with, he actually was a cop in my anti-crime when I was a sergeant. And he sent me a little story from ABC News. And ABC News was trying to stir up some shit, saying that the police had information that she was going to do this before she did it. And it turned out the call came in at about, I believe, at around 10 a.m. She was going into the school at 10:13.
Right.
And the event was over at 10:27. So the police did not get advance notice of this that they could have acted upon. And then later on, ABC did a different story and didn't use that same timeline, but they already did the damage. They were trying to stir up some shit, And
it's sad because they'll get one part of the story right. She actually did contact a person that she knew that I think about around the same age that may have was a former friend that may have gone to the school and said something like, this is my last day on earth, that sort of thing. And then that person did a very responsible thing. They called like suicide hotline or whatever to get some sort of information to help this friend that they hadn't heard from in a while. But the sad thing is they'll take, something about a prior message and then they'll run with it without even checking the facts. Where's the old adage that you don't run a story without at least, 2 people confirming it? And they didn't do it. And it's partly due to our 24/7 news cycle. Everybody wants to be the first with the story, even if it turns out wrong and the damage is done. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have, and that's why the messaging that the police department puts out there is so important. because
Right.
that is what the press is running with.
Yeah.
And in Uvalde, we'll go back to that horrific situation there. The police handled it horrendously at every point, from the response to the messaging to the post event. Everything was done wrong. And in this case, everything was done correctly.
Yeah. The police should be proud for what they did. They did a fabulous job in this case, and kudos to them. That's their training. That's their bravery. That's the Blue Brotherhood that we're a part of. Uvalde, that was a real failure of leadership, and before, during the crisis and after the crisis, and that's going to be, sadly, that's going to be remembered as a total cluster freak on the part of the police. But you see, when police are allowed to do what they're trained to do without their hands being tied, they can accomplish great things very quickly.
Absolutely. Let me play this about the victims here.
Who these victims were, the legacy they're leaving behind, some of them, as you've been saying, taken from us far, far too soon. 9 years of the students, 9-year-olds were the ages of all the students, and all of the adults who died ages around 60 to 61. So we'll bring you the latest as we learn it here at the alert desk, sending it back to you guys.
So we see, the 3 9-year-olds, and then 3 adults. Obviously, one was the headmaster of the school, if that's the proper term to use, headmaster. The other was a custodian, and the other adult was a substitute teacher.
Right.
So just horrific. And look, any loss of life is terrible, but when it's 9-year-old kids, it's just like. And again, everyone's going to be talking about assault weapons, gun control, and all this other things. And the actual chief, I think, mentioned, the Chief John Drake, that perhaps an armed guard at the school. And it's not the fact that just the armed guard is a presence and he's armed. It's that a would-be shooter may say, I'm not going there because they got an armed security guard. Whether that person is a retired police officer, an active police officer, military officer, it is a deterrent, I think.
Yeah.
But when we see how the shooter in this case entered the school, it wasn't through an unlocked door. I think I had a video of that. I'm going to show it. This is how the shooter, in fact, entered the school. I'll put this up on the screen. And how do you stop this?
Identifies as transgender, entered the building by firing through a side door. There you see it.
That's unstoppable. How do you stop that?
Right. That's a locked. Probably at this point, it's locked.
Kicks the
glass. Yeah.
Armed with 2 assault-style weapons and a handgun. That's according to John Drake. He's the Nashville Police Department chief there. So remember, the police identified 6 victims in this shooting there, the shooter, and you can see bracing the weapon, the sirens, it looks like, going off there. And remember, viewer discretion is advised. This literally just happened this morning, and emotions are still raw and still very, very fresh for this community, as now they are seeing this as well. The moments that 28-year-old shooter walked into the Covenant School there in Metro Nashville and started shooting.
Well, this happened on Tuesday, the
There it looks like
27th at
perhaps
10:13 a.m.
some type of front entrance. This is at a private Christian elementary school. Okay, so that is the first video released by Metro Nashville Police. Very, very difficult to watch, but you saw the moments.
So, Mike, that's the video of the shooter, how the shooter got in, which is the I think it was Uvalde. The shooter got into an unlocked door on the side. I believe that one of the teachers had propped open, and that became a big bone of contention. Like, oh my God, this person left the door open. But as you see, and I saw some people in the chat saying, "Oh, metal doors, steel. What are we going to do? Make every school like a fortress? We can't really do that,
No, it's we're talking about target hardening, and this comes under that idea of rational choice theory. When a rational person who wants to commit a crime, they see a target, and if the target is a hard target to penetrate, to get, they move on, or they desist from that sort of thing. If you can't put metal doors, you could put metal doors everywhere and turn every single church, every single building where people gather, schools, grammar schools, high schools, daycare centers. Yeah, you could do it and put barbed wire on it, but that's no way to live. This is what they did was these doors were locked. Obviously, that's a good thing. And if that person had, maybe a small caliber handgun, they might not have been able to penetrate the glass. Maybe they would have. But you're doing the best you can with what you got, trying to keep people as free to get in and out of school as you can under certain conditions. There was part of the story was that she had originally gone to a different location first, and then decided that she couldn't enter the building, and then came to this Christian school as a secondary target. I'm not sure if that's true or not. That was one of the stories I heard. If that's true, that would show that target hardening is the way to go. And in this case, they, hardened the target as much as you reasonably could do. But someone with a high caliber weapon could, break through that glass and, attack the kids there. But you don't want to turn our schools into places that look like penitentiaries. You don't want that. That's not who we are.
100%, Mike. The picture we have on the screen right now is of the Scruggs family. The dad is a preacher who I believe they just moved to Nashville. And the little girl there is Haley Scruggs, and she was one of the 3 9-year-olds that were killed in this shooting. Just absolutely horrific. And, it goes beyond words. You can't give words to this. And, of course, there's a lot of anger in this, like a lot of anger, I guess, directed towards politicians, a lot of anger directed towards police, a lot of anger directed, why is this still happening in this country? Why? Why were 16 kids killed in Connecticut at that school?
Right.
That should have been the last shooting. I don't have the number in Uvalde. I think it was more than that. Why were all those kids in Uvalde, Texas killed? And we still haven't done anything about it.
Right.
What are the solutions to this? Is there a solution to this?
Yeah, these are hard questions that, people are going to have to come to some sort of agreement on. So long as we're polarized into camps at the extreme left and the extreme right, we're not going to come towards the middle. There's not going to be a perfect solution. There never is a perfect solution for anything in this world, especially something to do with the rights of people to bear arms under the Second Amendment and the need for public safety. It's going to involve rights of privacy, medical records, psychological records, revealing those, red flag laws, temporarily taking guns from firearms from people who may be a threat to themselves or others. Like even in this case with the shooter here, the family didn't know that she had as many guns as she had. They thought she had one and then had sold it. Meanwhile, she was hiding guns in her bedroom or her house, which shows that there was a lot of planning. And that's, so it wasn't a spontaneous thing where she just got up one day and said, I'm going to do this. This was planned for a while. And can we greatly decrease the shootings? Yes, we can. But it's going to take a lot of compromise by everyone. and we're going to have to compromise a little bit on all of our ideals about the Second Amendment, about red flag laws, about rights of privacy and mental illness. And that's what it's going to take. And maybe we'll never get there, but we hope we can someday get there where people are willing to say, Sandy Hook in Connecticut. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was teaching school that day in college, and I remember talking about it, just finding out. It was right before Christmas, and it was horrific. And everybody thought that would be the end. That was it. Never going to happen again. And here we are. But we're a nation of laws. We're a nation of politicians. We're a nation of people who need to compromise. And the only way to do this is to seriously compromise your ideals, give in a little bit on a lot of different little issues, and maybe we could make this a little bit better than it is right now.
Ronald Hoffmeister, it showed the shooter shooting out glass in the doors. Didn't his parents know he or she had 7 high-powered weapons? Also, why didn't the doctor report that person was dangerous to the public? Ronald, very good points. I believe the parents thought that she had 1 weapon, and she said she had sold it. She actually had 7 weapons, and apparently she had bought the weapons from different gun stores, but she legally possessed them. So that's a scary thought when someone mentally ill can own these weapons. But what is the answer? Because Mike said red flag laws, even when we were on the police department, to try to get someone's medical or mental records was nearly impossible.
Right.
Because they're protected by HIPAA laws. So how is law enforcement to be notified if someone's mentally ill and they want to make sure that they don't own firearms? How does that work? That's, something we have to work on. We have to see how that works. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you'd like to subscribe to us, just go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's free. Give us a thumbs up and ring that bell. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel memberships with Canem, 5 different levels. And you see the folks in the font. They're part of our YouTube family, friends, subscribers, and we really appreciate these people. I wasn't going to do this case today because it's highly emotional, and I know that it's been covered wall to wall by the media, and some of them do a good job. Some of them go right to the politics of it. And I just wanted to give our police perspective on this. And the first thing, of course, we wanted to focus on was the great, fantastic, and look, 6 lives are lost. We don't want to just gloat and what a good job the police did. But if the police did not do as good a job as they did, we would have lost more lives in this incident, or perhaps at another location, because this shooter was not done. And they found that out through the post-shooting investigation, and we'll get into that a little bit more later on. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, Billy, can I just make one quick comment about what the viewer had mentioned about, the mental illness aspect of it?
Absolutely.
Psychiatrist, because I just remembered something quick. There's something called the Tarasov Doctrine. It comes from the 1970s. There was a case in California called Tarasov versus the Regents of the University of California. And it dealt with what is a psychologist or psychiatrist's duty to warn potential victims that someone under their care is planning to hurt them. And unless the shooter in this case actually told their psychiatrist or their psychologist that they were actually planning on hurting a particular person, then there's really no way for the psychiatrist, the psychologist, to give that that sort of advanced warning to anyone in particular, because you don't have a name. So it makes it very difficult for psychologists or psychiatrists. And if they're dealing with people that may have some sort of suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation, it puts them into a very difficult corner. Who could you possibly notify? When do you notify them? Do you notify their parents? What do you do? It's a very difficult question and issue for
Mike,
psychologists.
because there are legal ramifications to it.
Sure,
The
absolutely.
person reported on could sue.
Right. They have a right to privacy. And so you don't, it's a very difficult balance. So this was a great question here by the viewer. It was fabulous because it really goes to the heart of our rights to privacy as an individual and the sanctity of our medical records and our psychiatric records. This is the freedoms that we enjoy in America sometimes make it difficult to get other things accomplished. And this is just one instance of it.
No, absolutely,
Yeah.
Mike. I want to talk about also the post-shooting investigation, which is so important. And one of the things I learned during my police career was that if you get a shooter at a location, go to their home. That is like investigation 101. Go to their home because guess what? They may have killed their family.
Mhm.
They may have killed their girlfriend. They may have killed someone else in their home. And you may find things in their home connected to the crime, which, of course, in this incident was true. They found 4 more guns and they found a manifesto that she had planned other shootings and she had maps and plans to this situation. So that lets them know more and about the shooter. And, in other shows, I refer to this as perpology, and it's the study of the perp. And that's so important to go. And the number one reason to go to the perpetrator's house in a shooting incident, because there's a very good chance that the person killed someone else in their home. In this instance, that wasn't the case, but that's one of the main reasons why.
Yeah. In the Sandy Hook shooting, that's what happened. The guy who killed all those kids, like 24 kids, he had killed his mother first. And when they went to the house, the cops went to the house later on, they found her dead, but they also found lots of ammunition and all kinds of, information about what this kid was thinking. The perpology is important because it's like the victimology. Why would somebody be killed or assaulted? The victimology part, and the perpology is why would the person actually do this? What was on their mind? What was their reason? What were they thinking? Why would this happen? And perhaps it helps us understand the shooting, and maybe in the future we could use this information to try and cut back on this stuff in the future. One of the worst mass shootings was the one in Los Angeles. Las Vegas, where the gentleman who's like 52, 53 years old. We still don't know why. There's no real clear indication, unfortunately. He was very tight-lipped, even to his fiance, or maybe his wife. I wasn't sure what their marital status was. But you want to know, and the more you get to know, the more maybe you could help out in the future, because these situations, it's only a matter of a couple of months, perhaps, before we have something similar to this again. But it answers the questions: why? Well, what has been going on in this person's life? Have they been seeing medical help? Are they on medication? Have they just been fired from their job? Were they looking to kill someone else too? After they went to one location, they could have gone to another location. It's really important to understand the why behind a crime like this.
Absolutely. Schmitty, great question. Sergeant Bill, is there a specific reason why they chose to use a flash bomb to enter the home? You're referring to the perpetrator's home, right? They may have had information that there could have been an animal in there that was dangerous, or maybe even someone else could have been in the home. So a flashbang doesn't do any damage. It just disorients any animal or human being that might be in the location. So perhaps the Metropolitan Nashville Police had some information that there was an animal in there that could attack them, or another person. Look, there was 4 more firearms in that location. So whatever reason they had, but the investigation is so important. And as Mike was also talking about, was to critique yourself. What did we do right in this incident? What did we do wrong? What could we do better the next time? Because there's going to be a next time. There's going to be a next time, And I know a lot of, Europeans and people that aren't Americans, they question, Americans, why do they have all these guns? You know, there's 300 and something million guns out there. So what is the answer? Does government go door to door? You know what, that would cause a civil war if they did that. They're going to confiscate weapons. But I firmly agree something has to be done. The other thing, I think they need to really categorize these active shooters as active shooters. What I noticed they've been doing recently is calling them mass shooters. That's dishonest, I think, because what they're including is these inner city shootings that are just like on the corner type things. It's not the specific thing of an active shooter who goes into a location and just is trying to kill people and may for a political reason or mental health reason. But I think you need to categorize them specifically. This is an active shooter as compared to this is a shooting over drugs or a guy sprayed the corner. I mean, that doesn't fit in the same vein as active shooters.
Yeah, you're right. Just think about your time in the streets of New York, in Manhattan, and my time in the Bronx. There were plenty of times where there were multiple victims, and we never called them mass shootings. You know, how you categorize something is very determinative of how you're going to then go about solving it or investigating it. So categorizing these as mass killings when we have, you know, places like Chicago where you may have 3 or 4 people shot on one particular corner, or you might have like 75 people shot in the course of 2 days on a hot summer weekend. So, you know, this is a very difficult. How do you agree on the term like terrorist? You know, things like that, domestic terrorism, you know, overseas terrorism. You know, we can't really agree on, as a society, on the actual definitions of the words that all the news media uses, or people in academia use, or people in law enforcement use. There's not a single, you know, one definition fits all for these terms. It makes it very difficult to actually get people on board to say, okay, I know what you're talking about. I'm with you on that situation, because we all have, since we are the freest country in the world, we have this idea that we have very individualized thinking about it. So what I think is a mass shooting is very different from what somebody else thinks is a mass shooting. But you and I have seen these situations where kids are killed in the corner, and we call it something different from a mass shooting.
Well, Mike, you know what it is? And we've seen the politics behind it too, is that all the laws that come out regarding guns and legal guns and the right to carry guns don't apply to bad guys, because they're going to get guns and use them anyway. It's like recently in New York City, Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams made Times Square a gun-free zone. Who's that for? You think criminals are going to read signs? Oh, gun-free zone. Oh, let me go home and put my gun back. Let me go home and
drop my gun off.
Yeah, let me drop the gun back. Maybe the precinct will let me keep my illegal gun there. You know, it's like, it's ridiculous, because those laws just apply to people who follow those laws. And part B to that is that in New York City last year, and I don't have the exact number, there was between 2,000 and 3,000 gun arrests in New York City. That's all 5 boroughs.
Right.
90% of them were dismissed.
Right.
So how seriously is our government taking illegal guns if they're dismissing 90% of the gun arrests that the NYPD made? What that says to me is that they refuse to prosecute criminals. And so it's a double-edged sword there.
Right. No criminal's going to say, oh my goodness, I can't get on the subway because it says no guns on the subway. I can't go to Times Square. Oh, I'm going to leave my gun at home. And there's all those great victims out there, and I can't rob them anymore. No, it's unfortunately, it's all politics, as you said. It's all politics, and it gives the politicians the ability to get a little news bite and say, look what we've done for you. It's meaningless dribble. And if people, you know, think, okay, that's great. It's a, you know, New York City's Times Square is a gun-free zone. Really? Do you think it really is a gun-free zone? That's really pathetic. And it relieves them of actually having to make really substantive, decisive decisions about the problem we're facing. Giving, you know, 3,000 gun arrests, as you know, street crime in New York made a lot more than that every single year in the 90s and in the early 2000s. And that's how you get the streets of New York. And they once were we were once were the safest, largest city in America. And our numbers would compare to any city half our size when it came down to the number of homicides. So you need aggressive policing. They're not doing it anymore. They're dismissing the cases every possible chance they get. They're dropping everything down to a misdemeanor, giving desk appearance tickets. It's all just play acting for a news bite. And the people who suffer the most are the poorest people, Black, white, Hispanic, in New York, because they don't have the kind of neighborhoods where everybody actually respects the law. And they're the ones that are the victims of the vast majority of crime in New York.
Absolutely. I'm going to play a little more of the body camera.
And we froze the video right there. As you can see, it does go on to show the officers surrounding the wounded suspect on the ground. Police have also released surveillance video from inside the school. The footage, including the moments right here that police say 28-year-old Audrey Hale shot through the building's locked glass doors. And then other portions of the surveillance video here show the shooter roaming the halls of the school, armed to the teeth. Police say Hale identified as transgender, and a social media account linked to Hale included the use of pronouns he, him. So investigators say that Hale opened fire on police when they arrived at the school, shooting through a second-story window. So police released images of the guns that were used in the shooting, 2 assault-style rifles and a handgun. And last night, community members held a prayer vigil just a few miles from that school to mourn the deaths of the 6 victims. Those victims include 3 children, all 9 years old: Evelyn Dickhouse, Haley Scrubs, and William Kinney. The 3 adult victims, all in their 60s: Cynthia Peak, a substitute teacher; Mike Hill, a custodian; and Catherine Kuntz, the head of that private Christian school. Joining me once again from Nashville, ABC's Jacqueline Lee. Jacqueline, we sure got a lot of new information from the police chief there, holding yet another briefing for us.
From 5 different local gun stores here legally. They were legally purchased. 3 of those weapons were used yesterday during this horrific tragedy that happened. We know that they felt that she had 1 weapon and that she sold it. She was under care, doctor's care, for an emotional disorder. Law enforcement knew nothing about the treatment she was receiving, but her parents felt that she should not own weapons. They were under the impression that when she sold the 1 weapon that she did not own anymore. As it turned out, she had been hiding several weapons within the house.
And Kira, we do want to point out that we still do not know exactly what was the significance of the day of the shooting. We do not know why he targeted this school, other than that he wanted to target the school. And a big emphasis from this press conference is that the shooter did not plan or did not specifically target the 6 victims that were there specifically. There was no specific classroom or specific person the shooter was going after. It just seemed that the shooter was open firing on the school. Kira.
And boy, we learned a lot from that body camera, didn't we? And also the surveillance video that the police released. I mean, we saw Audrey Hale pull into the parking lot in the car, and then we saw police officers working their way up to the 2nd floor, all into the moment that they confronted the shooter. Found victims along the way, clearly trying to save lives while also trying to take down the shooter, who was still opening fire as they approached the shooter there on the 2nd floor.
Yes, that's right. And Kira, you know, the police chief even said, commended the officers with the amount of courage they had just walking into the situation. But as you see in that body camera footage, it's very organized. It's very structured. They know exactly what they're trying to do, which is to neutralize the threat. You can hear it in the video. It almost plays out like a movie. There's these sirens going off. They're yelling to get more officers there as they push through, systematically moving through each room, clearing it. ultimately they do hear some shots, so they move up to that second floor, and ultimately that is where they identify the shooter and take that shooter down. And their biggest priority is to protect as many lives as possible. And so the fact that they were able to neutralize that threat within 14 minutes is a big deal.
They did a fantastic job. And that, what the reporter on TV was describing is called training. It's called training. And that you could see they have excellent training, and they did a fantastic job. Schmitty, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. So pleased in the swift and proper action of police in this situation. Not all police have it within them, Uvalde. This police department sure did. Well-deserved and earned praise. Back to blue, 100%. And Milwaukee Civilian, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Schmitty inspired me to support this great channel. Thank you, Bill and Mike. Thank you, Milwaukee Civilian. We saw in Uvalde when some of the excuses they used was, oh, we were waiting for the boss. You're trained not to wait for the boss. Active shooter, go towards the gunfire. I mean, say that to a civilian, they'll be like, you're crazy. They don't pay you enough to do that. But you know something? You raise your right hand and you swore loyalty to the United States Constitution, to the Constitution of whatever state you work for, and to the citizenry of that state. If you can't do it or you won't do it, then you should quit. You don't belong in law enforcement.
That was the big takeaway from the 1999 Columbine shooting, because at that point, there was a huge campus, and the police got there, and it's a very kind of a fairly rural area. The first officer, the standard operating procedure at the time was you get there, and if the person you think is heavily armed, you wait for like a SWAT team backup. And so, unfortunately, their tactics at the time and their protocol, they followed it, but it took them a long time. It was like half an hour. It was a really terrible long time before they actually entered the school. And Klebold and his partner ended up committing suicide in the library, to end it all. But everyone in law enforcement learned from that one shooting, the Columbine shooting, that whole tragedy, was that even if you are a single officer in a car, you're by yourself and you've got a 9mm, or you got like we had a 6-shot revolver, it's your time to go. You go. You got no choice. You go forward, because we do know that when push comes to shove, a lot of these shooters, they crumble. We know that Klebold and his partner, they realized the jig is up. It was going to be over in a minute, and they finally, ended their rampage by shooting themselves. But tactics changed completely 180 degrees, and since then, they've been as successful as you could be in these type of situations. Uvalde, unfortunately, stands out as a real. It's almost like we're going back to the 1990s. We're waiting for a boss. The one thing as a cop, you got to be able to have nerve. You got to have good judgment. You got to be willing to go. And if you're willing to do that, if you've got,
Mike, I just interrupt you. When I saw Uvalde and I thought of our emergency service unit, they would be fighting each other to get through that door first.
Right. Oh, forget about it.
And I was like, what's different? This is Texas. What's different?
Right.
Our ESU guys, they would literally step over each other to be first in that door. And it's unbelievable to me. JJ, thank you for the $4.99 super sticker. I want to mention something. Railroad 22. No one denies the shooting was horrific or awful, but adhere to the Constitution and Bill of Rights and are responsible and law-abiding firearm owners. Are not obligated to take ownership of psychopaths. You're absolutely correct, Railroad 22. But, there's going to be a lot of politics after this, as if the way to mitigate this is to write new laws for legal firearm owners. And they'll argue a situation like this. This person bought these guns legally, but she had a mental illness. So, but how do you decipher? How do you separate legal firearm owners or people that can purchase firearms that are mentally stable from the ones that are not? How do you do that, Mike?
That's the $1 million question, because the Second Amendment is enshrined in the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, and any laws that affect gun ownership are are reviewed, especially by the Supreme Court and other federal courts, with the highest, strictest scrutiny that we have. And so it's not like the Second Amendment. Well, it's kind of like a right, no, it's one of the most important rights we've had since the beginning of our nation. And so you've got that problem. You've also have this problem of, the idea of privacy. We love our privacy, and the idea that, our mental health records could possibly be discovered by policing agencies. That could lead to abuse of our own civil rights. There's no easy answer. There's no one answer, one size fits all kind of answer. It would take a lot of compromise on our rights to privacy and our sense of what the word privacy really means to come up with a solution. Because you're right, 99% of the gun owners in America are law-abiding citizens that just want a gun for protection. They're not out there ever to hurt anybody. Yet this sort of horrific crime, because the guns were bought legally, suddenly, shines a spotlight on, well, maybe we need to punish that 99% of the people for the sins of the 1% who go about and actually commit crimes with guns. And the fact is, most people who commit crimes with guns, they got those guns illegally. Illegally, like the guys you see on the street in New York.
100%. Robbie, thank you for becoming a new member to our Police Off the Cuff YouTube channel. Guys, there's so many things, and you hate to point out in a situation like this where 6 people lost their lives that it could have been much, much worse. And it could have been had the police not done the professional, amazing, valorous response that we saw on that video. And we've watched across this country over the past few years horrific police responses. Parkland, the school safety officer basically ran away. I mean, it was disgusting. It was really disgusting to watch. Uvalde, probably the worst response that I have ever seen. I don't know any police department on this earth, whether their boss told, even if their boss told them don't go in, they would disobey the order. And something on a police service, and I've pointed this out before, you are only required to obey lawful orders. So if someone is ordering you not to go into a room where children are being murdered, that's not a lawful order. So if they use that as an excuse, the boss told me, that was not a lawful order.
Yeah, that was sad when you see some of the video, because it does seem like they were set to go. They had heavy or firearms, some had pistols, and they were ready to go. And for some reason, you watch the video and you're like, the surveillance video, and you're like, go. If this was the 4-6 precinct and we had NYPD ESU, forget about it. I don't want to, call someone out, but I don't understand the response in Uvalde and the response in Parkland. I don't understand it. You're told, you take the job knowing this is what you got to do. You go. You don't have a choice in the matter. You have to go.
100%. Robbie, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Mental illness or not, lives are more important. Kids are our future. The cops did their work and secured the situation. The cops did an amazing job. And I just also like to mention their names again. And they're on the screen. That's Officer Michael Colazzo on the left. And on the right is Officer Rex Engelbert. Rex Engelbert has all of 4 years on the job. And Officer Michael Colazzo has 9 years on the job. So, yes, they are deserving of tremendous praise. You think they'll be invited to the White House? Nah, there's not a chance they'll be invited to the White House. But they should be. They should be. They did an incredible, incredible job. It's just like when you see, when you're former law enforcement or act, and you see what these guys did, it almost brings tears to your eyes. Because that is what the police are supposed to do. And they did it, though. And it's still amazing, even though that's their job. They did it without question. They did it professionally. They did it quickly. And they did it without, worrying about their own safety, which you have to be able to do if you're going to take out an active shooter.
Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. The video was fabulous. Like I said, I had an adrenaline rush watching it. Brought back memories of the Bronx. And you see any sort of TV police show from the old show Cops, the police are always running to the gunfire. It's just like you just click into a different like high gear and you just go. You're not thinking about a lot of other things. You're concentrating on just accomplishing the task, neutralizing the threat to the public. And that's the greatest part of the brotherhood of policing is that cops will run through brick walls and drive 100 miles an hour to save someone's life. That's part of the job, and God bless them. We hope we could learn something from this tragedy about police training, the need for better police training, especially in Uvalde. Like, let's get our protocols right so that we don't ever repeat that sort of thing ever again, where we're slow on our response. Because when you're there, time is of the absolute essence, and the hesitation of 10 seconds or 30 seconds can mean the life and death for a number of people. And you can't do that. You got to confront that situation as fast and as good as you can, given the time constraints and the weapons that you might have, from a 9mm pistol to a shotgun to an M14. You just got to do it. You just got to do it. You have no choice.
Absolutely. Folks, if you're looking for a great defense attorney in the New York City metropolitan area, Joe Murray is your man. Joe Murray is a retired NYPD police officer and a fantastic defense attorney. You can reach Joe on his cell at 718-514-3855. Email him at joe@jmurray-law.com. His website is jmurray-law.com. Joe is a tremendous supporter of the Police Off the Cuff podcast, and we totally endorse him as a fantastic attorney. Folks, even these incidents, the Bible group, thank you so much for the $5. Godless nation is a death trap. I believe that also. One of the things that we say on this show is that when someone commented in the chat that ESU guys would be jumping over each other to get there, and something, their motto is anytime, baby. And they say that because that's part of the machismo of their job and of that that esprit de corps of their job. And they, danger is what they deal with every single day. But it's so great to see other police departments have this also. It's just incredible. Mike, we covered this, I think, pretty well. We gave our opinions. Your final thoughts, Mike?
I'm just proud that the police did what they did. And I remember the NYPD ESUs we used to say is, when the citizens are in trouble, they call a cop. When the cops are in trouble, they call ESU. And that's the kind of protocols and training. That's what it does for you. That sort of response. And they did what they had to do. Fabulous job. And for on behalf of the memories of the 6 victims, the 3 little children aged 9, and the adults, someday, hopefully soon, it'll be time for people to put aside their differences and actually try to discuss, even just discussing the differences that people have when it comes to the Second Amendment and mental illness and firearms availability and, red flag laws. It seems like it's taboo because, you suddenly get painted into one corner, called an extremist to the left or extremist to the right. But maybe this would be the beginning of the end of doing nothing. And maybe we could actually come to terms with our rights as citizens, but also the safety of society.
Absolutely. Before signing off, I just want to prayers to all of these victims: Evelyn Deekhouse, William Kinney, and Haley Scruggs. Those are the 3 9-year-olds. And the adults, Catherine Kuntz, Cynthia Peak, and Mike Hill. We pray for you, pray for your soul. We pray for your families in this time of grief. Folks, that's our show for today. I thank everyone for tuning in today. It's not an easy topic to cover, and I want to thank everyone for coming by. Mike, thank you for joining me today. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless.
soul just ain't enough.